All right. Hello, everyone. Hello, hello. My name is Demitra Douglas, and I have a wonderful friend with me here today, Amy Renee, aka Dear Heart. And we are actually going to be getting into a very powerful conversation today. And we are going to be speaking about deity work and spiritual subjugation. Okay. Now, this is actually one of my favorite topics. Spirit, myth, karma, and how all of those concepts work together is one of my favorite topics and one of the things I actually speak about the most. So, being able to discuss with Amy her perspective of it, and then me being able to share my perspective of it, I am very much looking forward to that. So, we are going to go ahead and actually, let me share. Why don't I share how this topic actually came up between the two of us?
Please.
Now, recently, Amy invited me to join a very beautiful seminar. And the seminar was geared toward getting in touch with the divine feminine. Okay. And it was Celtic based, it was Druid based, and it was Irish, right? Which are concepts that I adore. I'm actually more Scottish than I am anything else, which is something I find interesting. And I am Irish as well. My last name, Douglas, was actually Duggar, which is an Irish last name. And it was changed by my ancestors when they came to the United States to appear more American and to separate themselves from racism, basically. So I have always just had this heart-centered connection or this intrigue or this interest with anything Celtic music, just everything Celtic. I have always just been very drawn to. So the minute you offered that to me as an opportunity, I was immediately drawn to it. Now, when Amy asked me what I thought of the seminar, or if I wanted to continue with the process and continue with working with the beings who were teaching and leading this group, I declined. And the reason that I declined is because of my perspective of deity work and the association that I hold and the perspective I hold relative to myth, relative to deity, and relative to karma, energetic influence, as well as spiritual subjugation. So I asked Amy if she would be willing to come on and do a live with me so that we can actually connect and express our perspectives and see what each other really thinks. And I think this is going to be a beautiful conversation because deity work is incredibly popular. It is a huge part of the human experience. It's a huge part of many spiritualists' practices. So I think that being able to talk about it is going to be very, very interesting today. So, Amy, if you don't mind, would you please start us off by sharing, first of all, a little bit about yourself? You don't have to go on too long here, not too much pressure, but just really where you stand also as far as deity and how it has influenced your spiritual sight and what benefits you've gained from it.
Yeah. So I actually want to start by defining because I've never really seen it as a deity, right? It's never been in my life that way.
Okay.
And actually, the term spiritual subjugate, say it again.
Spiritual subjugation.
Okay. That is a word that I've never even heard of before either. So it feels important to kind of like just define those two. And then I'll share a little bit about myself and what it's been for me, which I feel like it weaves, there's a threading that takes place for it all.
Okay. So subjugation is, let me actually look up the precise definition just so that there's no, So the term subjugate is defined as to bring someone or something under domination or control. And subjugation is the action of bringing someone or something under domination or control.
Okay. Thank you for that. So I'll share a little bit about me, and then we'll also talk about the deity aspect of it, because that also feels important too, right?
Okay.
So I have what I call spirit-led life, and through the developing connection that I have with what I call spirit, whether you want to call it the Holy Spirit, some people say God. I feel there's a little energy that's off in relation with that, but it is that same source energy that is near and dear to my heart. It led me to a shamanic path, so to speak, which really opened up my intuitive gifts, right? So I like to say that my first guides, you might call them deities, you might see this in a different way, but I've always seen them as guides. Like, being Christian, I grew up Christian as a kid. Jesus was one of those guides in a sense, right? God was that, the guide, so to speak. But then I began to sense that there was something more, that it wasn't just about what was in the churches. And there's all these different religious ways of being and practice that felt just important. What was that commonality? What was that thread, so to speak? So when the shamanic path came into my life, and I learned to work with, the directions, the elements, the spirit animals as well, those were my first guides. From there, I actually had my first archangel that came into my life. I had never even worked with archangel, knew nothing about it. Archangel Sandalphon was that for me. And then another one, Archangel Metatron.
May I ask you, Amy, how these beings were introduced to you?
Okay, so Archangel Sandalphon, I was in a shamanic, I'm going to say, journey.
Okay.
And that's when Sandalphon came through. And it really was in relation with an intention. Like, I was feeling this call that here I am to share some of what spirit had brought into my own life that had been so impactful, so life-changing.
Mm-hmm.
But I would shake so bad. I was so scared to do it. And so my request to the spirit world, so to speak, was, if I'm meant to do this, help me have the strength I need to really share these gifts, to be there. So to me, Archangel Sandalphon is a being that is very connected to the divine, but also very grounded, connected to the earth in a sense. Each of these two archangels, which I find fascinating, were actually had lives as humans before they turned into archangels.
So ascended masters, so to speak.
Yes. They are the only two that turned into archangel. There's Michael, we've heard of, there's all these different archangels, but there's only two that have ever been human. So a lot of my guides, or the beings that I work with, or the energies I work with, have been human incarnate at some point of time. So they get this realm. So that's a little bit about how I began working with the different energies, the different beings, is what I refer to them as ascended masters. Yeah, there's definitely that whole way of looking at it. And so much more. To me, I see them almost like how I see you. I see you as a divine human being, right? We each have our own unique gifts. And I see that these beings, in a sense, are like our neighbors too. They're like other aspects of the whole of
derivatives of source.
Yes, right. So in working with the Irish Celtic goddesses, right, and getting to know those energies, man, what a powerful experience I had. Bridget is also one of those beings, goddesses, divine feminine, that we're working with. And to me, she really helped me embrace who I am. So I am a multi-passionate person. There's not just one avenue that I want to focus on. There's many different aspects that I'm called to, like the sound healing, the shamanic path, really spirit-led creations, like the numerology brought us together, right? So there's all these avenues. And what I loved about Bridget is she was a death doula, a birth doula, milk maiden, sword mate, like all these different avenues, but to embrace all of that as the whole, that there's not just one. It's almost like all these tools in our toolbox to work with. So that's just a little bit. And now I want to pass it back over to you for anything that's rising for you or anything that you'd like to share in relation with what the difference to you is of a deity versus these different ascended masters and beings guides that we can work with.
Sorry, the dogs are making noise. I think someone's outside. Yes, absolutely. Now, the shadow of what you just said to me that I tapped into, and you said it yourself, you said, I was looking to them for strength when you were speaking of the archangels. And you also mentioned when you were speaking of Bridget, you mentioned, you know, utilizing her power to really get in touch more so with yourself and what exists within you. Is it fair then to say that these beings support you in a manner that you feel is difficult for you to do without their input or without their influence, without their power?
It's more so of realizing that I'm not alone. Okay. Of like, oh, it's almost like if you've ever had, okay, we're just going to use our parents for an example, right? So we come into this life as babies. We can't walk, we can't feed ourselves. We're reliant on someone else. So to me, getting to see a different perspective of what Bridget was and what her life was really helped me embrace who I was. So it was like a reclaiming of myself and not shaming myself for who I naturally was. So it almost was like a spark of inspiration to embrace who I was. So not so much giving my power or having to source my strength from someone else, but sacred prayer, help me. If I'm not feeling it in this moment, what do I need to see within myself? What do I need to see? Even sometimes seeing outside of ourselves helps us to see inwardly too. So bringing different perspectives to help us fully embrace who we are.
Now, let me ask you this. Why do you think, because we mentioned it before, and I very much believe in all deity, right? All spiritual influence, all beings that inhabit in numerology, it's the realm of 8. Them existing and being created as derivatives, right? Why do you think humanity did that as opposed to allowing just one sovereign source to remain the essence and the being to which we look for this strength, we look for this clarity, we look for this guidance? Why do you think so many different derivatives and fractals have been created as far as contributing to humanity's spiritual practices?
So I'm just going to share what came through. It's the fracturedness, right?
Yeah.
All part of the whole, even you. Like there's an aspect of me that knows that you're me and I'm you, right? But yet we're experiencing the wholeness of who we are by these different fractals, by these different pieces, by these different ways. Why we've chosen that, I feel like I'm on the journey to know that. And maybe it's that return to source when that fullness comes into being. I've had an experience where I experienced every sound, every color, just every emotion all at one time, and it was so intense. So this
too much, almost too much to perceive as one.
Yes. It's like, I can't handle this. This is too much. So I have an awareness that no matter how hard life gets for us,
Yeah.
It's actually like a vacation from the oneness
Yeah.
of all of it, right?
Mhm.
So to me, this is a gift. But then there's also the forgetfulness of the truth of who we are. And so by having these different pieces of the puzzle, it helps them come together in a way that's digestible.
I understand. I understand. Now, Amy, I'm going to get a little bit into the actual specifics of my perspective, because when I say these things and I ask these things, I very much acknowledge the truth of deity. I very much acknowledge the existence and power and sovereign forces that these beings are. I just have a very specific and precise way of looking at their influence as it relates to humanity. Now, in my book, which you do have, in the beginning of my book, I talk about the difference between a soul and the difference between a soul and a spirit, right? So I talk about what a soul is, right? Soul is really the existence of all components of us in our psyche, right? We have persona, we have inner child, we have shadow, we have ego. All of these are components of the psyche that can help you nurture the soul, can help you understand the pain of the soul, and really the components of our individuality, right? And of course, the purest aspect of that soul is the inner child. It's that light, right? It's that sovereign light that unfortunately through trauma is harmed, you know, for most of us, for all of us, I would argue, just in different ways and to different extents. Now, when it comes to my perspective of spirit, I use the term guiding spirit for a very specific reason. Now, during the time period that I was developing my number system, additional concepts were being revealed to me as well. And because of what I was doing as my day job at the time, I was able to test my theories hundreds of times, hundreds of times. Now, in order to truly be able to map deity or map guiding spirits with each human being, I need complete vulnerability. I need someone to be able to share with me the most taboo, the most uncomfortable, the most traumatic experiences that they've encountered during their lifetime. Okay. And because of the fact that I was working as a substance use disorder counselor at the time, this was very easy for them to do with me. It was the nature of my role at the time. I was a counselor, and I was a counselor for beings that had endured great trauma. And we're in a very vulnerable place, and we're actually comfortable building a rapport with me, right? Because of the love and the care that I showed to them. Now, they didn't know that this was what I was doing when I was mapping their guiding spirits, but I very much was. Now, with this being said, my perspective, and if you're familiar with depth psychology at all, right? So any sort of archetypal concept, right?
Okay.
Any sort of Jungian concept, right? Me and Jung have very overlapping eyes, but I am not a student of Jung. I do not study Jung. I can only assume that we're initiates of the same avatars, so to speak, right? Zilla, the avatar that is the shadow, right? Zilla in Hebrew means shadow. And that actually came to me in a dream. So Zilla came through to me in a dream, and it was very strange. It was like I was writing on a piece of paper, and I saw it clear as day. And it said, "I love Avatar Zilla." And lucky enough, I woke up and I said, "Who is Zilla? And what really is an avatar?" I had never really understood that or heard that before. So I looked it up immediately. And that's when I learned that Zilla is the shadow. So everything that I understand about concepts that Jung also teaches about are not from me studying Jung, right? So Jung also teaches or taught, he's no longer in the physical in the physical realm. But he taught about the shadow. He talked about the persona, the ego. I can only assume he talked about the inner child. I don't know because I don't study his work. But one thing that Jung also is known for talking about is archetypes. Now, when we talk about the realm of 8 and we talk about deity or spirit or when I say spirit, what I'm referencing, or when I talk about the realm of 8, what I'm in particular talking about is any being that exists in that realm, that whether demonic, whether angelic, whether archonic, whether of light or of dark, whether of high or of low, right? Mythological figures, mythological creatures, right? Everything that is written, right? Everything that has been created, right? I very much believe human beings have the power to create a deity, right? By way of creation, right? Every deity or every mythological being that we talk about, that we learn about, that we honor, we know of because it's been written, right? It's been written. That's why one of my favorite quotes is, and this is paraphrased, but humanity has gone too far in thinking and forgot that destinies are written. And it's the importance of it being written. Okay. Now, let me jump back a little bit. So I'm talking about the same concept here, but my perspective is much more precise than simply aligning humanity with various archetypes, right? Various archetypes, there's usually less than 20 major archetypes, right? Even astrologers talk about there being approximately 20 different forms of each zodiac archetype underneath the umbrella of each zodiac. So archetypes are a very common concept. And it's because of the nature of humanity, right? So, but what I've been able to hone in on is the fact that each human being actually has one specific guiding spirit that can be mapped by way of myth and karmic path. I have a few examples to share with you about ones that really stood out to me. So I have encountered vessels used by some of the most prominent deities that exist in the realm of 8. Electron is one of them. Phaethon, Odin. Odin's very interesting. Odin is a very pessimistic energy.
Oh, interesting. Experience with Odin, so that's fascinating how it shows up differently for each of us.
And I want to talk a little bit about why that is, okay, and how it influenced, because I'm talking about a true vessel of Odin. I'm not talking about someone who chooses to honor Odin because of deity work. There is a difference between you being a true vessel for a guiding spirit by way of your karmic path and the energetic influences that are influencing your life, right? The good and the bad, right? Deity comes, or when I say deity, I'm talking about gods and goddesses. I'm talking about these mythological figures that myth is a misnomer, right? They're very real, okay? And this work has really allowed me to perceive that. There is no bone in my body that does not completely honor the validity and the truth in the existence of these beings. I am in no way talking about that when I talk about spiritual subjugation. And if you can see where I'm trying to go with this, in my opinion, deity work should begin with the guiding spirit that is actually completely aligned with you and your karmic path. That is where it should begin, right? Because by understanding the shortcomings, the karmic lessons, and the stories, because when we are speaking of deity, we're talking about a very specific energetic space. Deity does not ascend easily. They just are. I am. And I am this. This is the energy. This is the role. These are the traits. These are the powers. This is the story and the timeline. So when we're talking about a karmic path, we're talking about a precise timeline that completely aligns with one very particular deity. Okay. It's almost creepy, so to speak, when you are able to map someone's guiding spirit, because it's like, am I even in charge of my own vessel? Is free will even real? And I do not have the answer to that, but unfortunately, I lean more to no.
Ooh.
I lean more to now. There is not, I'm not saying there isn't some sort of spiritual benefit to a soul having a guiding spirit, because as you said, human souls are all in various stages of evolution, and karma knows what she's doing, right? So based on lessons we have to learn, based on our past life circumstances, right? We are going to be paired with a guiding spirit. We're going to align with a path that is meant to help us grow, right? So it's not like there isn't a reason for this, but there are also many other minds that would agree and say, look, human beings are vessels to be used at the will of the gods. Okay. So when you can really tap into this, I am going to argue that deity connection should be first placed with your own guiding spirit. And even in that approach should not include mental subservience, only acknowledgement and learning. It should not be any sort of mental perspective like, I need you to do anything, or you are capable of doing anything that I am not, because that's untrue, right? It's everything that we may look to deity for, right? Abundance, joy, clarity, strength, all of these things can be achieved within the self. And if we are constantly having to place offerings to this deity and that deity, and this deity represents this, and this deity represents that, and I see them as, because what happens is mental subjugation. I start subconsciously seeing them as a liaison between me and God, between me and source. I don't need to go through them. Right? So it's about what the relationship that you're creating with them is really founded on. And like you said, yes, they are all derivatives, and they are all because of the aspects of the self that we hold. Yes, understanding their energies and being able to honor them and acknowledge them can teach us about ourselves. But I think there's certain deficits that can be created within the self also, as far as trusting our own ability to connect with source directly and to attract the things we truly desire without the help of a liaison or a derivative, right? Why do I need a derivative if I can go to source? But we're also talking about a very specific concept when we talk about the work that I do and honing in on very precise guiding spirits for each human being. Because with that being said, yes, there is no escaping it. There is no escaping them. There is no escaping their influence over humanity. Now, I want to share with you a few examples that I do have written down. And I will start with myself. Now, when it comes to honing in on guiding spirits, there are a few ways you can do it. Now, when it came to the Odin vessel that I had the honor of working with, he was so pessimistic. But when he cracked a smile, you knew you were doing something right, just because his baseline was so, and he wasn't like angry, or he was just very pessimistic. It was very interesting. But I digress. So when it comes to, okay, no, Now I remember where I was going with that. Name meaning is powerful and very helpful when it comes to mapping someone's guiding spirit. Now, that's not the end all be all there, right? Because someone's name could have absolutely nothing to do with their guiding spirit, but there still will be an energetic influence there, right? There's still going to be an energetic influence there. With me, my name is Demitra. Demitra translated means of the goddess Demeter. So it's pretty obvious there, right? It's pretty obvious there. Now with Demeter, sorry, my dog. With Demeter, Demeter is known as the goddess of harvest. Confirmation from Michelle. I hear you, honey. I hear you. She's known as the goddess of harvest. But her story also holds a lot of pain.
Ooh, okay.
A lot of pain, a lot of rejection, a lot of abandonment, a lot of loneliness. No one would help Demeter in her moments of despair, in her moments of grief, right? Losing her daughter and all the gods turning their backs on Demeter, right? So all of these concepts, unfortunately, very much align with what I have endured in life.
Oh, geez.
Further than that, there are also, when you understand the realm of 8 and you understand karma as it relates to reversal of roles, especially when it comes to your guiding spirit. So when we talk about karma, we're talking about, when it comes to 5 karma, we're talking about internal or external discomfort, restriction of thought or circumstance. When we talk about 8 karma, we are talking about karma as it relates to past lives, as it relates to actions and reactions, and as it relates to the spirit. So when we understand those concepts, we can start to develop our 8 eye even further to understand the difference between the karma of the soul and karma of the spirit, how they overlap, and how the more unfair something seems, the more disconnected a tragedy, let's say, occurs that in no way reflects a human being's behavior, right? Let's say there's a human that's just a completely a loving light that just cares about everyone and just goes above and beyond for everyone and doesn't judge people and just wants to heal people, and they end up being unalived, right? If you can map their guiding spirit, they're usually going to be led by a malevolent spirit. So they are reaping karma of the spirit. Okay. There's lessons in there. Of course, there's karmic lessons in there that their soul needs to learn, right? Expansion of consciousness, learning more about malevolence, right? But these are very important components. So when you understand the reversal of roles, when we are talking about karma of the spirit, Demeter being a goddess of harvest, something that I've had to endure over and over and over again are repeated barren harvests. Putting my heart and soul into things and reaping no reward, right? Reaping no harvest at all. And why would that be? If I'm led by the goddess of harvest, why would that be? Because Demeter was very quick to remove the harvests for humanity without a second thought. Okay, do you see where I'm going? Like, you will now endure what you once so easily threw onto others, right? What you once sowed, you must now reap, even if it is of your spirit and not necessarily of you. Okay, so it's a very, very interesting conversation to have. And one of my biggest karmic lessons in association with the goddess Demeter is wrath. Having to learn to, despite all of the pain and all of the trauma and all of the mistreatment and all of the judgment and all of the rejection and all of the abandonment and all of the community rejection, right, that I've encountered from big groups of people, right, in a very public way, all of these things could, if I was not aware, contribute to me being a very hateful and wrathful person. And I used to be. I used to be. So all of these things are spiritual lessons, karmic lessons that need to be learned. And this is why when I say, if we're going to be doing deity work, start with your own guiding force, because it is in that work and in that direct connection that you will grow the most, that you will be able to map your lessons, that you will be able to understand what you need to learn, right? If I'm over here spending all of my time worshiping Freya, but I'm led by Demeter, do you see it's not, I'm just completely overlooking the being that actually perfectly coincides with the path that I'm walking. That deity is the key, not that deity. Okay. Now, once we've acknowledged these things, once we've learned these things, but this work never ends, right? That is a key that to a door that is forever there for us to walk into and learn more about ourselves on a very deep level. Now, I have a few other examples here. So, this was a very strange one. So, when it comes to Electron, when I mapped this vessel, it was very, and it's like, you have to pay attention. They'll just, when you're speaking with a spirit by way of a human vessel, you want to pay attention to the weird random things that a lot of people might just brush off, but are actually very important when it comes to being able to map. So with Electron, the keywords there were chicken,
Okay.
and guarding a door while a friend, right? He had a friend guarding the door and keeping an eye out for his wife, I believe it was, while he was engaging with his girlfriend. Okay. So there was this very strange story, and I'm like, that is super weird. So I looked online and I said, God, mythology, chicken, guarding door, love affair. Electron came up. That is the precise story of Electron's timeline. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Phaethon, when I encountered the Phaethon vessel, his was very interesting. So when we talk about, and it's almost creepy, when I say it's almost creepy, I mean, and like free will doesn't exist, I mean that very literally. This man's compulsion to follow this karmic path was just, it didn't make sense, right? It was very subconscious. It was very unconscious, because when we talk about the realm of spirit and the unconscious mind, the spirit controls the unconscious mind. It is deeper than the subconscious mind. It is us doing things just in such a compulsive manner. It really doesn't make sense. So with Phaethon, he literally spent his entire adult life chasing his father and following his father's path, right? And so I looked into that. I said, God mythology, following the father, because it was such a prominent part of what he expressed to me. It's like, I'm just worried about my father. I need to find my father. I wanted to be just like my father. It was very interesting, but his father was homeless and abusing substances. It was a very interesting thing. So I was able to hone in on the karmic lessons there, on the energetic influence there. And that's when Phaethon came to the surface. Phaethon's actually Helios's son. And when we talk about the reversal of roles, we could even go deeper and talk about, instead of following the father toward the light, he followed the father toward the dark. It was a very interesting energetic reversal of roles there. And when it came to Odin, there was two crows that I kept seeing when I was working with this being also, and Odin's known for his two crows. And it was just interesting because this vessel actually had a tattoo that was an ode to Odin. And he didn't even know, right? He didn't know that I had actually honed in on him actually being a true vessel of Odin, right? But he had the tattoo. He had it right here on his hand. And one day he brought it up. He's like, oh yeah, this is Odin. And then I started diving. The more I would work with him, the more I would meet with him and learn more about his life, the more I would understand, because Odin's actually known to have a very pessimistic energy. Odin is not a kind energy at all. Odin is also the bestower of mental illness. So when we talk about the reversal of roles concept, any true vessel of Odin is likely to be burdened with mental illness. What you once bestowed onto others is now going to become your cross to bear. That is the concept there. Now, the next one I want to talk about is the actual guiding spirit of my best friend that was unalived, Robin. I was able to hone in on her. This was actually the beginning. This was one of the first ones I mapped as this idea started coming through me. And when I read it, I was in shock at how precise it was. So with Robin being led by Clytemnestra is actually an example when I talk about a benevolent being being led by a malevolent spirit. Clytemnestra is more of a malevolent energy because her timeline and her story and her myth, she's the aggressor, right? In this myth, Clytemnestra has 3 children, and she unalives her betrothed, her fiance. Now, when it comes to Robin, she has 3 children, but she was actually unalived by her fiance. So when we talk about the reversal of roles and that energetic influence, we're talking about karma of the spirit. Okay. Another one, Shiva. So Shiva, regardless of being, and let's be clear about this, there are no cultural boundaries here. There are no cultural boundaries here. Despite, for example, despite Phaethon being a Greek figure, the vessel that I encountered was actually a Mexican American. Mm-hmm. When it comes to the Shiva being that I encountered, despite Shiva being an Indian influence, his vessel was very much a Caucasian American, right? Now, this was a very profound one for me because this vessel or this human being was actually very much spiritually tapped in. He would actually receive visions, and he would actually talk to. He would have communion with Shiva. He didn't know that it was Shiva, but he had pictures that he drew of this being. And he, now it was very interesting for me because with Shiva, Shiva is one of the blue men, which means that Shiva is actually a dead energy, right? As dead as it can get as a deity. But they're blue for a reason, right? They are depicted as beings who are dead, so to speak. Osiris is the same. Osiris is also a blue man. And when we understand energetically what that represents, we need to pay attention to it, right? We're talking about typically more low vibrational. High frequency, but more lower vibrational is going to be common there. Spiritually enlightened, right? But there's still a death to it. There's still an energy to it that lacks light. Okay, so another part of the Shiva story is actually talking about the consumption of poison. It's a very prominent part of the Shiva story, the consumption of poison. And this vessel, despite having communion and already being able to see Shiva clearly, right, in his own spiritual mind, was a daily methadone user. And methadone is very much, right, a harmful opiate, right? It's used for various reasons, right, to manage the addictions, but that's a different conversation for another time. It is still poison, right, to the body. So these are just some examples of the various, and I do it for fun, right? I'll watch movies. You can watch movies and map. The more taboo, the better. The stranger, the better, right? I did a live not too long ago talking about this, and I had just watched a movie. I don't remember now what the movie was called, but it was about 2 twins, 2 twin brothers that fell in love with the same woman. And I was curious. And of course, there's a myth for that. And it's very mappable, right? It was, was it Athena? Was it Athena that they were in love with? It was a Greek myth. It was Greek. But the karmic paths, we're talking about the mapping of karmic paths. So I have a very specific perspective when it comes to deity, when it comes to myth, when it comes to karma, and when it comes to how these beings that exist in the realm of 8 influence humanity. Now, we may have different perspectives, right, so to speak, but at the same time, I don't think we really do, because we both acknowledge them as very valid beings and very powerful energies and guides,
yes,
for humanity in whatever way that looks like. I think I just see them as a very specific karmic key also.
okay,
Right. And because of the power of karma and because of the importance of karma as it relates to inner work, as it relates to ascension, I just really hope that humanity can, because another issue here is religion is so collective, right? That if I have millions or billions of beings all honoring one being and completely overlooking the fact that they're connected to another one that's actually dictating what they go through in life, and is there sitting there waiting to be a guide and a key to help you understand what you need to learn, what your soul needs to learn. I think it's a missed opportunity. I think it's a missed opportunity. I mean, we see Buddhas everywhere. We see Jesus everywhere. We see Odin's popular. They're all popular, right? Especially when we get into different cultures, right? When we get into different cultures, there are many circles that have a very specific group of deity that they worship. But if you're being led by, I don't know, Hera, right? But you spend all of your time honoring Buddha, I see it as a missed opportunity. I see it as, if you take a minute to get to know Hera, to map, first of all, to map and figure out who your guiding spirit is, and learn everything you can learn about that being and connect with that being, you will be opening so many keys within yourself that are truly needed to master yourself, to understand your karmic lessons, to overcome your karmic lessons, and to truly grow as a being. Now, I know that was very long-winded, Amy. Does what I just shared with you make sense to you at all?
Yeah, absolutely. And I absolutely love how we each have our own unique experiences with these. Some of them I've never heard of or worked with, right? Odin, that came to me in a dream. So I've had that's like 6 months worth of journey, something that would not be covered in this time. But regardless, and you speaking about the mapping aspect, right? So you know what that is. You know how that's shown up for you, right? But there feels like to be some key energies that, as we're addressing this topic and speaking of this, that mapping aspect or that awareness is going to be valuable in our own lives. And I just want to take a moment because so you spoke about your name and this goddess that's connected with it and how you've experienced aspects in your own life in relation with this, right? And I don't see that as you worshiping a deity. I don't see myself worshiping a deity, but nonetheless, these energies are very much a big part of our lives in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
So my birth name given to me by my mom, Amy, beloved. Renee is my middle name, rebirth, right? So even that's going to have its own energy that's going to work with us. About a year ago is when Deerheart came through. Okay. As I'm exploring what is this? Is this like a higher self? What is this energy? Part of why I believe that showed up is because I was questioning, how do people get their names? Like, so shamanic level, right? Spirit name, so to speak. I have a friend, Stephanie Redfeather. We've got an elder in community, Stumbling Deer. Like, where do these names come from?
Yeah.
Okay. When I have two different people that don't know each other address me as Deerheart, where was that coming from?
Yeah. Yeah.
As I'm in meditation. Okay. So it was a Kundalini Christ-centered retreat aspect. So there's mudras, mantras, yoga aspects that we're doing, right?
Yeah.
Being in a deep space. Okay. To me, there's something about this like in between energy that we can access energies or things, what might be in relation with our soul can come through to communicate with us. Right. So I feel in my heart that that's how Deerheart was able to come through.
Yeah.
When I say she, because that's the energy that I experience it to be, but it feels like the being is actually more of a balance of, it didn't have to be feminine or masculine, but that's just the way that I resonate with.
Yeah.
And she comes through, and when I say Deerheart, it's DEAR heart, but it's also, there's a relation with the animal deer too.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So the antlers, and she came through and she's, I am the embodiment of the divine feminine and divine masculine. Yeah. And then she gave me a mudra. So the heart hands with the pinkies up as the antlers. So the divine feminine and divine.
I love that. That needs to be your logo, Amy. Oh my God, that's
perfect. So it's all coming through in the whatever. It is what it is. I just want to. So this past week, I've continued just to get to know. I'm not someone that forces things. I'm just allowing. Okay, here's this energy, getting to know it. To me, it's helped me when I was in dream space and I was out of town and I had some almost like psychic attack stuff. Like I woke up and it was like almost like I was shaky. My heart was like almost like panic mode, and I had to go outside to the sunrise and be in that energy of the sun to help shake off some of what had taken place during that dream time. And Deerheart came through, and there was this connection to what I call the divine with the antlers, but also this deep groundedness of that love of Mother Earth that holds us, that we are part of, that we are on, that we are in a sense made dust to dust, right? We are made of the star and the earth energy. So this past weekend, and I must say I had a full-on heart opening experience. And another name came through. It was like Deerheart was sharing the first name with me. Okay. But it's not just spoken. It's almost like a song aspect coming through. So I'm going to tone it because that even has value in it. So, Stara. So Astara. So Astara. So you could even do star. So there's like almost like the chanting aspect that can come through too, but that's not how it came through. It was almost like more of like a wave, a softness to it.
I see. I'm also hearing and experiencing like a letting go or a relief.
Yes. That.
Right. The exhale.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So to me, this is almost in alignment. Okay, how do we work with the mapping? What is that? And that might be a whole nother live that we do, but I just want to acknowledge that I feel like we've opened a door here to really explore and go into and dive more.
Because they're both of our perspectives are true at the same time. Yes. And they're two different layers of it. And as you're speaking, it's because just because we might have one guiding spirit that dictates our karmic path the most, right? And aligns with our own soul lessons the most, right? there's also a journey taking place with each of our souls in the ascension and descension process. When I talk about all beings that inhabit the space that is 8, they each govern a space. So as we're aligning with different energies, right? And the more tapped in you are to the realm of 8, to the realm of spirit, and the more you can receive, and the more of a conduit you are for that space, and the more in tune you are with your own healing process, your own ascension and descension processes, and the more you're able to receive insight or a name of a being that aligns with the space you're inhabiting at the time, right? You're talking about having a heart-opening experience and aligning with Astara.
Yes.
What does that tell us? That energy, that Astara, is associated with that heart opening, that I don't like to use the word release, right? Because
I'm with you.
Right? Let go instead. I don't want it coming back, right? But that letting go and that relief, right? That comes with that opening and comes with that shedding, right? That's what I'm perceiving there. And when we align with these spaces, because spirits inhabit spaces, that's why their storylines and their myths and their roles and their duties and their energies are very precise and very specific. They are who they are. I am what I am, right? And they have jobs. That's why they're derivatives of source, right? When we get into the dark side of it, right? Christians don't like to hear that, Satan or the devil, whatever term you want to put to the darkness, right? Two sides of the same coin.
Yes.
I am all. So I am, and that being, that deity, has a job that I've ordained upon that space. That is a governance. That is a governor of that space. And when you align with that space and those experiences, because of your own energy, because the work you have yet to do, or the testing I want done upon you, right? Or simply because you are vibrating. So this is what I'm experiencing, right? Especially because of the Blue Lotus journey, right? Courtesy of you, right? It makes me very high vibrational, even more than I already, but it's just like, it adds a euphoria to my high vibration, and it adds to my ability to remain there regardless of any sort of chaos that's going on around me, if that makes sense. So because of that, right, I'm just sitting there like a beaming light in chaos. and for beings that have not done the work on themselves, or are experiencing mental deterioration, or are just in a darker place energetically, you have to, the attacks, right? The attacks. So when we align with those spaces in whatever form that looks like, whether it's because I've chosen a spiritual path where I worship lower energies, right? Satanism, or just Baphomet altars, or whatever your dark thing is, right? Or I just haven't done the work on myself and I lack the awareness, so I'm aligning with this space and these experiences. Or because I have done the work on myself and I am enlightened and I am high vibrational and full of light and love and heart-centered, so I'm attacked by these spaces and these energies just because of the nature of duality and polarity, right? And it's not, they're just being what they are because they govern that space and that is their job. So I think that this has been a beautiful conversation, because these are the energies that surround us. And I hope that the collective, the greater collective, and humanity in the masses can start to wake up to this, because there's blinders that are put on for a lot of people, right? When they commit to one single religion or one single perspective. Even when it comes to, right, the beauty of the Irish culture and the Irish circle of deity, right? All real, all valid, all powerful. But that region is equally influenced by all of the others. right? So the more we can understand all of them, all of them. I mean, that's why when it comes to mapping, I map using key terms, key experiences. I don't do anything. It's never cultural. It's never cultural because there's no cultural boundaries when it comes to the realm of 8 and the realm of spirit. It's about spaces and energy and duties and roles and jobs that they have because they're all derivatives of source. So based on the description that I can give to any single being, that's the space they inhabit and that's the energy. So when you're aligning with these new energies, if I'm aligning with these new energies and these new beings and however they want to come through, right? My initiation into my initiation with Avatarzilla, it just happened. And then from there, it was whirlwind. That's what happened right before the whirlwind, right? That I talked to you about the creation of Demitra's number system, learning about shadow, learning about all aspects of the psyche, learning about this myth and karma and deity influence concept, as well as numerology and numbers, all happened at the exact same time. It was all interconnected. That's why these are concepts that are so deeply imbued in my work. It's not just about numbers. It's not just about numbers. If I talk about 8, I'm talking about everything we just talked about today. So when I do videos and I talk about 8, I'm either going in detail about the different karmic aspects. I'm talking about guiding spirits and everything we just talked about today, and just influence of that realm, right? And how it all works together. But so when I talk about 7, I'm talking about shadow. I'm talking about darkness. So it's all a process that came to me at the same time. And so this is why it's one of my favorite topics, because it's magic to me, right? It's like, it's magic, and it makes the human experience. So once you've been mapped and you tap into your guiding spirit, it's almost like the initial feeling. It's like direct God and goddess influence, connection. It's almost like a feeling of just automatically feeling more powerful, right? I'm not just some basic human. I'm actually connected to the divine in a very profound and very precise, irrefutable way, right? Because it's not simply based on my belief system and choosing to believe and honor and follow these deity. No, irrefutably, everything that I've endured in life is the same story as theirs, with different twists and turns because of karmic law there. But I think that the magic that comes from that awakening process, and then understanding your own soul and understanding just how all of these things work together. And then with the numerology, numbers, it was very, like, I just was swept up into a whirlwind of magic. And I think that humanity, if they embrace, these doors we've discussed today, this is why all the terrible things that are happening right now, I mean, yeah, they're terrible. And yeah, I acknowledge that. And it's unfortunate, but the other side of that coin is we're divine. And we're surrounded by magic. And when we remain in the right space and heart-centered and open and just focused on the right things, I think that we can change the world. So all of that other stuff, I mean, it sucks, and it keeps getting worse every day, right? On a mundane level, of course. And it is unfortunate, and it can be scary. But the spiritual reality that is existing simultaneously, it outshines it, in my opinion. Yeah. Right?
It does.
Yeah. And I mean, and Blue Lotus helps.
It may for you, and for others, they may have a whole different experience, right? Because we are in this world of duality. So I have had super amazing high experiences, but I've also had the shadow aspect that I've worked with in relation with it, right? So, and nonetheless, right, because that is part of that awakening, that is part of through
the
me,
contrast.
right?
Mm-hmm.
It all serves. I feel called that I want to acknowledge a big part of my path and my that I set for myself. Only that which is for my highest and greatest good is allowed in my space. And if I'm working with direct source energy, I trust that no matter what comes in my space, no matter what it looks like, even if it's the hard shit, excuse my language, that too is somehow for the highest and greatest good.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Mm.
What a great day. What a great morning, Amy. And I'm so grateful for you and your beautiful energy and your time. And I want to share something because I went to on the full moon, I went to a sound bath, right? And I know that's something you practice. I know that's something you talk about. It was my first time. And it was she was great and all, but I'm in my head, I'm like, I wonder how Amy does this. I would love to experience this with Amy. Is that something you do? Because I know you have the picture with the sound bowls, and I felt them for the first time, and it was like it just consumes the body. It's so relaxing.
The vibrations.
Yeah.
I want to share that each sound journey is going to be unique.
Okay.
Just like each of us is unique, right? So the way the sounds work with the individual, how they do it. So for me, being trained in the shamanic arts, not only am I working with the sounds as a holistic tool, but I'm also weaving like an energy clearing in relation with it.
Yeah.
So we always start with the heart. We always start with the breath to create the environment that we want to play in, because that's significant. Okay. So if I'm thinking about hard, rough, I've had a shitty day.
Yeah.
What am I opening myself up to? So where we start from, that connection of the breath, the connection to the heart, the connection of moments of love and bliss that we can just recall from past experiences that help us create. Then working, I'm so blessed to have a partner who works with the sound too. So he's playing the didgeridoo. I've got the drum.
Whoa. I love that.
Got the deeper vibrations that are not only helping to ground, but there's also a breaking up of that stuck stagnant energy that's in the being. But then he also plays the Native American flute. So the drone flute, going into that to carry away some of this stuff. To me, the bowls and the tuning forks help to raise the vibration, to balance things out. The Tibetan bowls, there's different qualities of bowls. So if they ring for you ding it and it's ringing for more than 45 seconds, that's what brings in the master healing qualities. So each is going to have its own unique experience. So congratulations for opening yourself up.
That's great.
That experience. And I can almost guarantee you what you would experience with Polly and I is probably going to be beyond what you experienced.
I know. And in my head, I'm like, well, let me give this woman her shine and stuff like that. But in my head, I'm like, but that's honing in. It's another skill set you have, Amy.
And it's spirit.
Another one.
Spirit, not me. Yes, it is. But
girl, it's you, girl. It's all you, girl. You have skills, you have gifts bestowed upon us, right? We are initiates. We are bestowed, we honor that these things come from a higher space. But we can also walk in confidence and in skills because we have them. But you also brought up something that I want to make sure I mention before we close here, because you said being mindful about the energy you're in and mindful about what that can cause you to attract. So it's also important, right? So, and you also saying, the contrast of the blue lotus. For anyone that's new and doesn't know what blue lotus is it's blue lotus. It's the flower, but it can be consumed as a tea. And Amy gifted me a bunch of it, and I have been honoring it. I've been working with it. I've been sharing it, right? with those closest to me that I think would benefit from it. And some, they don't feel it. Others, I'm a Blue Lotus girl now. Thank you for the gift. It helps me relax. My mind's not racing. I sleep longer, right? For me, it's just a complete and I think maybe that's why it came through you to gift it to me, because I do benefit from it greatly. I do feel the euphoria. I do honor respectfully the contrast and acknowledge that any contrast I experience, right, is already within me. And this is allowing it to come to the surface for me to work on it more, right? So, right, the higher the enlightenment, the deeper the shadow. So we do need to be mindful and paying attention to those things. But like you said, even when it comes to deity connection, deity work, like you said, what deities are we attracting when we're in certain energetic frequency or vibrational states? Mapping that also, right? How do we think all of these concepts came together and how humanity came to these conclusions? Why are these beings associated with light and these with dark, right? Why am I experiencing these symptoms? Maybe having mental health issues or just feeling energetically drained when I'm in alignment with lower energies and lower frequencies. But when I'm in alignment with higher energies and higher frequencies, I'm feeling more heart-centered, right? And I'm feeling more clear and calm and focused and compassionate, right? But why am I lacking compassion when I'm in a lower energetic state, right? So, and then the more tapped in we are, right? They come through you, they come through me in a variety of ways, right? But we're also aware, so we pay attention, right? And when we feel something, we look into that and we honor that. So I hope that anyone that has been watching today or that watches this video later on, this was a great conversation. And I think we accomplished exactly because I'm leaving this conversation with complete respect for your opinion, right? And expanded consciousness, right? And now you know how I see it and I see how you see it, right? So I think this has been beautiful and I'm so grateful for having you here today, Amy. And is there anything you would like to share? Please follow Amy, everyone. She's here. I will tag her on this YouTube video. She's also on TikTok. She's on Instagram and she's on Facebook. Why don't you share with them your handles, Amy?
That's a great question. What I'll do is I'll share them with you and then we can put them in the show notes. That way it just makes it easier for everyone.
Amy will be linked below, you guys. Amy will be linked below.
Absolutely. And I also just feel called that if anyone feels called to reach out to me, you can reach me at Amy Dearheart, DearHeart at Gmail. And I'll connect that way. That feels good to just be. And I'm just grateful for our time. These messages, our open-heartedness to explore and make space for each perspective. To me, that's the key. There's times that we may not see eye to eye, but that's okay. That's part of this beauty of who we are as individuals. So
we're individuals, we're derivatives. I have a perspective for a reason. I'm meant to teach what I teach. You have a perspective for a reason. You're meant to teach what you teach. But the baseline of it is we honor and acknowledge deity. We just perceive their purpose a little differently, maybe perceive their roles a little bit differently, but even on a foundational level there, not really. You know, we honor them as derivatives. We honor them as true and valid and existing and influential. And how we choose to work with them or whether or not we choose to work with them is our own prerogative, right? So thank you, Amy, for your time and take care.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.